Yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in today. I'll, once this slide pops up, come on, there you go. I'm going to be going over some cool stuff, tips, tricks, other techniques that I just love to develop in Power BI. The overall theme of this is it's going to be a lot of like little snack size things that we're going to be learning about. But to start with, I want to go ahead and just give you a little introduction to me for those of you who aren't familiar with who I am. So I've been in the BI space now for probably about, I'd say 7 years, and essentially running my own business, in full for about the last 3 or 4, and running it in, at least part-time for the last 5. I've been an MVP now for a couple of years. Been very grateful for that, and a lot of that has actually come from the plethora of YouTube content and conferences, events, and meetup groups like this that I present at. I just really like to share, all these cool techniques and information that I just know about the larger BI platform in general out with people, because I know that was the way I often self-taught myself. My kind of specialty and kind of area that I would say lean towards is definitely been visualizations. I was graciously nicknamed the VizWiz about a couple of years ago from some other MVPs. Just because that's it, largely the specialty that I focus on is really design and aesthetics and just presentation as far as the front end goes, because that's often just what customers see first whenever they want to employ you. It's not a data model diagram that's going to impress an executive, but pretty visuals and a well-designed report certainly will. I also do a lot of teaching as well. I'm both an instructor at the University of Washington. I used to actually teach at Bellevue College as well. And I've actually even built a few visualization courses for UW. So I definitely dabble my skills in a lot of different areas, from consulting to teaching and just online content.
Let's go Beavs. So, can we get a let's go Beavs though?
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah, just as long as bees, maybe, just not the ducks.
I totally agree.
Yeah. All right. So
you guys really know how to make friends. You know that?
It's true. Yeah. Let's talk about some of the stuff we'll be going over in the next, I'd say, 45 minutes or so. Granted, what I want to show in front of you isn't everything we're specifically going to cover. This talk that I have can go anywhere from 45 minutes upwards to 90, just to, depending on where I'm presenting and how much time I have. As you can see here, it's very modular. There's a lot of different things that I go over. So in general, what I will say is that we will get through as much as we can. More than likely, we will just be covering the native visualizations and features. But the nice thing is I do a lot of videos. So anything that you don't see covered here, there will be video links to the rest of these. So you'll actually be able to consume some of this stuff on my YouTube channel as well. So there won't be any content you'll miss out on. You just might get a recording of it rather than me giving a live demo of it. But either way, you'll make sure to get access to the content. And basically, this is entirely demo driven, so there really isn't any more slides after this. So let me just go ahead and exit out of here and we'll hop in. Something that I like to do that I'll encourage all of you to participate in is, as we go through some of this stuff, rather than just pulling back the curtain and revealing the trick or the technique that I'm doing, I like to sometimes just ask the audience maybe how I might have done something and see if people can guess or figure it out. Get a little bit of community participation.
And I'll be moderating the Q&A for Reid. So please put your answers and questions and all that. I will make sure to publish them.
Perfect. So the first thing that I want to go over is a kind of a happy accident that I came across with this one, stumbling through as I was developing. But right now, what we have in front of us is a line chart that actually has conditional formatting applied to it. Now, I'll start the conversation just by saying that a line chart does not allow you to apply conditional formatting to it. That is not built in. If you go to data colors, typically there's a little symbol over here in the corner where you will normally have a little icon or something like that, 3 little dots that allows you to pop up a window and apply conditional formatting. However, that is not in this visualization. So before I just show you how to do it, let me give 5 or 10 seconds just to see if anybody can guess how I was able to essentially apply this, knowing that that option is not in the format pane.
I made an announcement. I want to see if other people can reply to this.
Okay, cool.
Let's see if anybody can reply to my announcement based on his question. Again, I'm still learning a little bit of Microsoft Teams. I don't know if only I can reply. That one, it makes sense. I hope others can reply to what is published. I am seeing somebody say column chart to line chart.
That's exactly right. So
Dang.
Whoever got that is correct, whether or not you saw that in a previous video or maybe you were here on one of the previous talks that I did. But that's essentially how you fail successfully with this. I have actually since emailed Microsoft and confirmed that this is not a feature that's going away. So this is safe to implement in production, because there are certain things where if you find something that's quote unquote like a hacker or something that really shouldn't be happening, do just be careful with applying those. If that is an update that might happen, that removes it. But the way to have conditional formatting applied to the line charts of these dots. One sec. Oh, there you go. Need my mouse again. You need to come up and you start with a column chart. Column charts have an option with that fancy little ellipses in there where you can click on it, apply conditional formatting. If you do this here first and then convert it to that line chart, that is how the conditional formatting will stick with it. And again, like that kind of seems like one of those things where, wait, this seems like a bug that might actually get updated and fixed. So I emailed internal support and I asked them about this, and they've said that it essentially originally was a bug that shouldn't have existed, but because enough people have implemented this, they're just leaving it as is. Ideally, they add an option in here someday to just allow you to do it natively, but it's still a safe application if you ever want to get KPI dots on the line based on any kind of color logic that you want to apply. So really quick little tip there, and certainly a way to add just some additional value, especially if you want the lines to easily break out, in this case, kind of with the high positives, kind of neutrals and negatives for those. And let's see, and Graham, I'll have you, if you can, do a time check, because when I like to present typically with the status bar or the menu bar hidden at the bottom. So if you can just give me like a status, say every 15. So sure. Like first 15 in, 30, and then 45.
Yeah, you got it. Yep.
Cool.
You got 40 minutes left.
Yeah, sweet. I figured it wasn't that much. Another thing that I want to talk about in here is a feature that came out last July, maybe June, sometime over the summer, is the idea of a visual tooltip. It's been a super useful integration that I really like as far as being able to provide friendly text. In this case, this is just general text in there, but what it's doing is it allows you to provide information related to the visual. I've just filled the data in just so you could see what it would look like. But this is actually already doing another trick that I've applied because the native option for this has a limit of 250 characters, and I've somehow managed to get around that. So again, I'll ask the question just to the group. Can you figure out, for those of you who've used this, what I might have done to allow for a larger text box to fit in here with a greater than 250 character limit? And while you're doing that, while the answers are coming in, I will go ahead and get ready to go look down here and open that up here in just a second. Now, if nobody can think of it, I'll go ahead and show it in either way, no problem. All right, well, I'm just going to go ahead and pop this up here. We actually have two options to do visual header tooltips. Native one is just, you basically type in the text in this little box, and the limit is 250. So typically that looks like this. That's the size of the box. All you have is simple text. There is also no option to say italicize, bold, format. It's just basically word wraps the text as much as you type it in there, and it stops at 250 characters. Now, a way around that is I created a report tooltip page with a text box on it, and I formatted it the same way. So instead of actually just using the default, you can use a tooltip. In this case now, I basically made something look like a text box, but that is actually a report tooltip page that is just over here. And the nice thing about this as well is you can actually now, if you wanted to, you can bold some, you could underline some, you can actually do more rich text formatting on this if you wanted to. So it gives you greater customization to that. There are other ways where you can also include even charts and graphs if you really wanted to. Most commonly, this is the probably most common implementation I've used for report tooltips in the visual header, but at least it allows you a broader canvas and more customization if you wanted to do a richer and more detailed text field than just the built-in one. The downside, of course, is you would need per visual a hidden report page for each one. So there is a little bit of development when it comes to there, but as long as you don't have like 15 different report pages and 500 visuals, it's kind of a one-time thing. You build it, they're hidden, and until you actually hover over it to render it, it's not going to impact the report page. That's another really good benefit to this as well, is this does not cause page rendering any slowdown in the rendering on the page. Like if you actually were to use like say bookmarks and create other kind of pop-up windows for information, each one of those visuals on this page does slightly slow down how long it takes the page to load, because they have to, web browsers are single threaded and they have to load one visual at a time. This doesn't hit a performance impact until you hover over the icon. So there's quite a few benefits as far as that goes. But that's kind of, let's say like tip and trick number 2 for this demo. I will pause right here before I switch over to the next one, just to ask if, give it about a minute or so if there's any questions.
I saw somebody say, how are you connecting that? And I was saying, and saw the custom page. Does the tooltip just look for other pages as an option to select? How are you surfacing that? Yeah.
So I'll very, very briefly mention this. The scope of this specific example isn't to show how to make a report tooltip page. I do have a video on my website, on my YouTube channel. All those links will be available at the end that actually walks you through the details of it. But there is a page setting, just to show this very briefly, where you can set a page as a tooltip. There's also other ways to customize the resolution so it's smaller, but it is a toggle when you create a new page and hide it to make sure that it's identified as a tooltip, which then makes it pop up in the menu when you have an option to say like, what page do you want to attach to this?
That is pretty slick.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite features that came out of about 2 years ago in Power BI is report tooltips are super cool.
Mm-hmm. And so that's really interesting that it's basically a blank page, not a blank tab, right, in the report. Yep. Interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really cool when you actually use a standard report tooltip, because that means when you hover over individual elements that are filtered, then you get like a bunch of mini charts that are constantly re-rendering with those new filters. So like there's super cool stuff that you can do. If that's interesting to you, again, I would recommend going to the link I provide at the end of this, and then checking out my YouTube channel. I'll actually hit a milestone. I just noticed when I published tonight, I just scheduled my 100th video that I published to that channel. I will be on video. I will be on video 100 in 3 weeks when it goes live finally. So that's kind of a nice milestone.
Congrats, Reid.
Yeah, just the next big one is getting to 100K subscriber and getting that like nice little silver YouTube button that they send to you that you can put on your wall.
I'm gonna make a bunch of virtual agent bots to subscribe, so I'm on it.
I think you can buy it for like what, a penny a subscriber or something in India. So no, I want to get them legitimately though. Like I want to be like, yep, every one of those people wanted to watch my videos.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it will happen.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's a matter of when, not if. I'm pretty sure.
There you go.
All right, next thing. This is another cool one that I came across, and the fun thing about development, at least, is a lot of these ideas come out naturally when I am hit against a creative wall where I'm trying to figure out how to do something. So this one is a table heat map that I built. This came about when I was building a bunch of Google Analytics data, and I noticed on their site they actually had this exact table by day of week and time of day, where it, through color heat mapping, it shows kind of the distribution and collection of where like hot and cold points are for your data clustering. There's no data labels or anything else. It's just, I find it very intuitive and I really like the visual. Then my first thought was, okay, is there a custom visual? I checked the store. There's a custom visual for heat map, but it lacked a lot of features and a lot of customization. So then question 2 is, all right, well, instead of a custom visual, how can I do this with a native visualization? So that is how I did that with a matrix table in here. And the question I'll pose to you is, what settings did I need to apply to be able to configure this to get the colors to show and the data labels to disappear? And I'll mention the fact that there is no option to go in the settings and just say turn off data labels. There is no data label toggle anywhere in here. If I was to look for that, there's no data label. So how do I make that disappear essentially in this matrix table?
Let's see what we're getting in. And also there's like a few second delay, by the way, on these live events, which is why we got to give it a little bit.
Yep, no, that's fine.
Maybe tell us other things that you cannot do.
Well, the nice thing, at least with the matrix table, is it has more configurations than any other visual in Power BI, just period. Like, you know, it's probably the reason that they added a search bar, if anything else, is so you can figure out where the heck, like, you know, all your font settings and everything else is. Like, I actually love the search option.
We got some answers. Formatted values to blend colors on match heat map. Font equals background color, tiny font. Conditional formatting.
The second one listed in there. So you can apply more than one color format per conditional formats per measure or per value in here. So in this case, this, you look, there we go. This actually shows you what's already been applied. This has background and font color applied to it. So as long as you have the same logic for both, they blend into each other because the font is going to match the background color, therefore basically disappearing. So that's all I've done in here is I've, you know, if I just remove the background color, you can see that the font has that light dark blue color. And as long as the background color has that same logic to it, that's really all that it requires for that. Let me just open up one and just show you the menu. And then it sounds like you had a question, Greg.
No, so you're saying it's I'm just trying to tell people that got it right. It's the font and the background color that you made the same.
Yep, exactly. So I went to font color for page views, applied this kind of range. Same thing I just went to, and then I secondly went to background color, applied that exact same logic because the settings for background and font are identical. The only difference is am I coloring the text or am I color or the font or am I coloring the background itself? That was one of those kind of aha moments of I've never thought of applying more than one conditional format at once, but why couldn't you? I actually tested it out and you can actually have background, font, icon, and data bar all at the same time. It looks terrible, but you can technically do every single conditional format in the same cell if you really wanted to.
Sure, everybody's getting annoyed from all my ding ding dings that I'm posting, but you know, but I'm having fun with it, people.
Greg's a superstar.
No, it's you.
All right, so we're going to cover a few more things now. What I want to now do, let's go from here. Let's go and talk about some of the new stuff. Two away, and then we'll talk about the new stuff. So last one, that was at least part of the old session. Another, again, thing that came out naturally from a conversation with a client where they said, you know what, hey, I really want a stacked column chart. However, I also want a total at the top of it. And well, there's not really a native total just built into the visual. You know, if you create a stacked column chart and you turn on data labels, you get a data label per every subtotal in the column. You know, there's no just grand total option to click on at the top. And this is a fairly common request that I've had from customers who want this kind of feature. So again, I will now take this solution, push that back to you and ask, how do you think I did it?
Also, you are almost at the next 15-minute mark, FYI.
So that will be a total elapsed of 15 or 30?
You have another like 20 minutes. So I would say elapsed 30 minutes. Making me do math, Reid.
I know,
tough
cool.
for me.
I think so I can cover the last two, which are the new ones. I'll actually just short circuit the questions and then just talk about this then. So let me click on it. Let's go ahead.
On just total, column chart underneath stack chart, combo.
Correct. Yeah, so both of those answers are correct. Previously, I layered two visuals on top of each other, which worked fairly well, and then I could group them. I had somebody show me at one point how to make this during a presentation where the trick is with a combo chart, if you put something on line values, and again, it seems like a bug, not a feature, but you can take the line and there's an option to change the weight, how thick the line is. You can make that a weight 0. Weight 0 means the line just disappears. So there is a line there. It's just invisible because there's no actual weight to it. So that's what I've done here is you basically put the same value as column and line here. And if I actually go over to my settings and look at shapes, a couple things that are important. Number one, you want that stroke width to be 0. Again, like that's one of those things I would never think to click down because it's like a raised start at 1. Like, of course, you're going to be 1 or greater. Why would you ever have a 0 width? But other than this one like trick. You know, I've never seen another scenario where you would want the line to disappear besides this, because otherwise you just have floating numbers kind of just hanging out randomly on the page and it looks weird. But in this scenario, it works effectively. So it's kind of an odd implementation where they allow you to actually go all the way down, but it's like having -1 decimal places. Like that would just not make any sense to allow you to do that. But because this exists here and somebody showed it to me, I was able to figure out how to do it in one visual. A couple of other things that I'll mention that are important to get this to show up is that you'll notice that both at the regular level and in the focus mode, it still only shows the data label at the top. So to make sure that this kind of stays true is you actually need to come down to data labels, and customized series is very important. You want to make sure that for whatever you have on the legend, in this case, I just have Monday through Sunday. It's not really important what the categories are, but you want to have the data label turned off for everything except for page views, because otherwise, if you make it full screen and they can fit in the column, all these other data labels are going to show up. So you want to make sure that everything's turned off except for just this top piece, as far as that goes. And then maybe some just formatting in general, determining whether or not you want to have like markers or anything else at the top. One thing that I've done kind of as a way to kind of help lock in and understand that is a grand total, I will turn the marker on. Notice now that this dot is aligned to page views down here. If you want to make it really clear what that is, come up to line values and go ahead and rename that to grand total. So now that there's kind of a representation to say, oh, what's this dot? Ah, that's the grand total. That's why it's up there. So if you have users who kind of need that extra nudge to understand what they're looking at, that might be one way to help them out with it. But the nice thing is, as one visual, it works seamlessly. Anytime you filter it, nothing ever becomes misaligned. So it always stays at the top there.
Nice. So you're not actually, as you said, you're not stacking visuals. You're just using the combo chart and just changing the.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think the only other thing that I did is this, because there's one other thing that I know I needed to do to get it at the top. Here we go. Position. Yeah. If you do auto, it pops around like this, and that doesn't obviously look good. So as long as you make sure that that position is above, it'll always sit nice and neatly at the top above those.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's a perfect, like zero glitches as far as this implementation goes. So there's never any issue of it kind of, again, like breaking, quote unquote. All right.
That's awesome, because I think I remember last year you had done it like stacked on each other. That's pretty sweet. You were able to find an even better solution.
That's correct. And like those are my favorite moments where somebody in the audience raises their hand and, what about this way? Oh, wow, I just learned something. That's cool. I get to go home with a new skill from this presentation. So I actually really like it when somebody in the audience can tune me into something that I'm unaware of, because I know a lot of stuff, but I'm far from knowing everything, and it's fun to be able to learn things from people who are there to just hang out for the presentation. All right, let me go ahead and do my last two. These are the new ones, so I'm super excited. Every time I open up my start menu, Tiger King just pops up right there on Netflix. You can't avoid Tiger King. He's everywhere.
My daughter downstairs watching Tiger King as
right
we speak.
now.
Yeah, right now.
I binged it in like 2 days. It was really addicting. All right, last one that I just did. This one is actually not a video yet. It will be coming out in about 3 to 4 weeks. It's part of the past newsletter. But this one was, again, one where a client scenario that had a situation where they wanted a button that automatically changed time perspective. They didn't want to have to come in and, I want to look at month. Okay, I got to click here. I got to click here, and I got to click here. Like that's a lot of work to have to click every visual to drill down. As opposed to, you could come, click a bookmark button, have it toggle between all of these instantly. So basically, you're changing your time perspective for the page through bookmark actions. And that was one thing that I hadn't really thought about before, because bookmarks typically are, I know that they toggle visibility. You can make things show and hide. You can navigate pages. You can also filter. But I hadn't really thought of using them to kind of sync hierarchy navigation. And like this was the solution that I came up with. So I want to show you a little bit about that. There are some also, like, as you can see, some dynamic buttons that I have at the top. Again, there's certain things that are within and outside of scope of this. If you're curious of how I got the colors and the buttons to kind of toggle, I'll happily provide some videos for that as well and at the end of this. But I just want to show you the general concept of how a bookmark is doing this. Go back to quarter and open this up. So with any of these three bookmarks, we have the quarter, month, and day view. And let me open up the selection pane as well. Show my visuals over here. So you basically have three things you can update. You can update the data on the page, you can update the display, and you can update the current page. Now, the hierarchy navigation on these visuals is considered to be part of the data. Like when I first built this, I thought it was display because you're more changing the display and less about the actual filtering. But because hierarchies do allow for drill through, technically that is filtering that can happen if you were to say click this and drill down. So that's why it's being wrapped into the data section. So when you make a bookmark, as you're setting it up essentially, you need to make sure that that's selected here. And then I also have my display selected because each of these buttons, just as a quick digression, I have two versions of it. I have like a dark and a light one. That way it gives that look of toggling. So as I change from quarter to month, it gets darker and it looks like it's been selected. So that's what that little group here is. Each button has the same button pasted there twice, one that's light and one that's dark. Again, the details of that will be something that you're welcome to check out a video I have on it. But the primary goal of this is to really discuss that one useful way of using bookmarks is to sync hierarchy levels between visuals. A couple things that I want to mention as kind of gotchas with this. It's really important as you're building this. In general, I almost never make a bookmark with all visuals selected here, because that means that just every visual on your page, every page of your workbook, everything that just exists on your page might get updated and reverted back to some state that was that existed when you made this bookmark. Almost with very little exceptions, when you are making a bookmark, you should select the visuals that you care about and make sure that this gets toggled. So I'll give you an example here. Let's say that I've configured this page to look the way I want it to when I want to have the month view done. So in this case, there are four visuals I care about. It's the page views, I'm holding control, unique page views, new visitors, organic searches. I also care about toggling the display of these buttons. So that would be 1, 2. So I have actively selected just the visuals that I specifically want that bookmark to affect. And then you would add it and basically make sure that all selected visuals is chosen here. So try to avoid having this applied. At most costs, there's seldom, if ever, a reason that you will need all visuals versus this. So this is significantly safer. Bookmarks are a great feature, but I have found that of all features in Power BI report development, bookmarks are the easiest way to fudge it and accidentally have one visual that doesn't get updated when it should, or a visual that should be updated that doesn't get updated. So it's very easy to misconfigure them. So just be very careful in building these. And as my personal recommendation, definitely use selected visuals in that sense.
And we had a really good question come up, Reid. Can you use a switch to achieve the same idea instead of bookmark?
It's a great question. So that would be a lot more complex to build. The switch statement and DAX with a disconnected slicer is, I'm assuming, what you're referring to. That can change the visual that you see on in any of these columns. So the measure and the metric inside of the visual can be updated to change from, let's say, actuals to budget to customer count, but it cannot. Disconnected slicers have no way of impacting the drill up or drill down capability in here. Again, there's technically a way to do it, but that goes so far in the realm of advanced that I'm not even going to mention what that idea might be. In general, when you want to toggle the levels like this, bookmarks are 100% the best approach for those scenarios. All right. I'll save any other questions about this until the end. Again, this will be the only video or the only demo that I don't have a video of yet, but you got a sneak preview of it tonight, and it will be coming out to my channel here in a few weeks. Last one that I want to show.
Reid, such a sweet guy.
I know, right? Exactly, just for you. Get out of here, Tiger King. There you go. All right, last one. Again, client scenario that I got. Somebody wanted this card that we have in front of us to be built. where they wanted a value at the top. They wanted kind of a status bar. Think of like a health gauge below that just was, in this case, red or green, whether or not if it had a negative variance delta or a positive one. And they wanted, title and a little description here at the bottom. So we can kind of observe it changing. If I was to click between these, you can see the values and the text and everything else changing. My question to you, and I realize my tabs at the bottom were hinting at it, but how many visuals did it take for me to build this card down here? It used to take one number, now it takes another number. Excuse me.
So, interesting. So how many visuals, and are they stacked? So did you stack them on top of each other, or?
Not even on top, just next to each other. Yeah, there's no actual overlay that needs to happen. They're just, adjacent.
See what people say. I'll guess a 100, or maybe actually I'll guess 5. I'll guess 5.
Thankfully, not that many. I've gotten it down to 2. It used to be 3, but for any of you familiar with Power BI tips, they had a great article called Mo Visuals, Mo Problems. Like in general, the more visuals you have on your page, even text boxes, it just requires more time to render. Even if it's just 100 milliseconds, because unfortunately, browsers are single-threaded. So if you have 50 visuals, it can't load them in tandem on your 16-core desktop processor. It has to load them one at a time. So whenever possible, I try to look for, trying to do visual formatting, but still as few visuals as possible. There's exceptions that I make where, like, if I use a shadow as the background for like some, to make it aesthetically pleasing, that might add 50 milliseconds, which is still marginal, but it's a concession I'm willing to make. But for the actual visuals themselves, I don't want to have 8, let's say 10 of these visuals all requiring 3x objects to be in the page. So I got it down to 2. So we have here at the top, let me just copy and paste one more time. I love to group things, so here we are. We have a total, even today, I'm still slightly getting used to the new location of all the buttons on the new ribbon. Let's just ungroup you. There we go. We got visual number 1, and we got visual number 2. And they beautifully stack on top of each other, but what we have is actually a button. The top piece is a button with a dynamic title. And what I've done with the fill, because that's actually, technically that's just the button area. I've just made it really, really, really narrow to make a tiny little sliver of a line. But that's, the fill color, like a lot of elements in Power BI, can have DAX formatting applied to it. So there's just a simple measure in there that is, basically looking at a KPI and saying, do I color it red? Do I color it green? Depending on a condition. And again, the measure itself isn't as important, but I'll show it for about 5 seconds. Let's just type in KPI. There it is. Yeah, so one thing you can do, just as a quick mention, is field-based formatting. For conditional formatting means as long as your measure is exporting only hexadecimal colors, RGB, or anything else where all the conditions being met, export that as a value, you can apply it, and then it basically just puts in the code, and then that's the color it formats it based on whatever conditions are being met. So that's that little sliver in here. Now the trick being is that I had 3 visuals previously. I had to have separately on the top of this, I had a single value card for my for the data label itself, because I previously was not able to use a title. So the title does not allow numbers to be put into there. There's no way to actually go into here, and do a dynamic title where you tell it to say, hey, put this numerical value into there. It's only allowing me right now to actually do one value. I can't do these. Like if you actually notice, those are grayed out. I'm only able to do these 2. So a quick question to the group, or even to you, Greg, like what do you think I did to these measures to allow it to actually be used in the title?
Oh man, I'm the last person to think about how you did this trickery.
So I'll give you a hint. It's related to the word title text, as what kind of data type is required for a title.
Guessing it loves image types.
Right? Yeah. It only allows title types. Sorry, text data types. So what I did to get the visual number down and actually to pop it into there, I converted that to text. So basically created like a measure that just formats it. So I'll show you that. Basic just format option. So it is displaying as a number, but it's actually a text output. I mean, I ran a performance test against this. I was curious, like, what how much effort would applying a format to this do versus, say, having a second visual. And this still runs about 35. This renders about 35% faster than a 3 visual grouped object. So this is still the fastest method for it. It's not like a perfect solution, but the question just kind of comes for, you can either stack 3 visuals to do this, or you can write a simple measure. There's basically zero cost to adding additional measures to your model. And as far as making them fatter, it's bytes that it takes to store the code. So it was my way of figuring out how to performance optimize and streamline this visual and have the title itself be the actual displayed value instead of just like open or anything else. Again, these were based on the client requirements that I had. I'll just demo the bottom section. This one's actually the easiest. It's really just a standard single value card with a title and just some DAX that's been formatted in this case. Declared a couple of variables and basically just created a concatenated string. So it's the percentage formatted as a percent, the target formatted as that. And again, it gets less relevant about what this is, more of the fact that whatever you want to display at the bottom, you can write a measure that displays that. And I added a little bit of fun and just an up and down arrow into there, just to help better understand that if it's positive or negative. But yeah, it's a really nice little card that came out of it that is all using entirely out of the box features, but gives you a card that's very unique looking that you typically don't see in most reports.
Pretty sweet.
I'll leave this open for comments and I think wrap up for a bit of water cooler stuff and the end of my talk, because I'm assuming I'm right about time. So
yeah, no, we got you got like 5 more minutes. We can first start fielding some questions. We'll let the time delay get through to see what people got. And again, whether questions or just let's treat this like an ask me anything to Reid. Pretty much Reid can hack whatever is what we've realized. So if you can dream it, I'm sure Reid can do it.
Yeah, why I'm answering questions, and it can be related to that card that we just saw, but I'll also just throw in my 2 cents. I'll just give a quick spiel here and then open it up for questions. So the links that you see in front of you are to my website, including the presentation PDF that you just saw. That'll actually have all the YouTube videos. That's going to be available on my Speak at Events page. The QR code on the left just takes you to my main site. What I also do as well for anybody who attends any of my talks, I give a coupon code that will work on any of the files, templates, or other consulting services I provide on my site. I have a lot of just like cool Power BI files that I have available for various needs and services. So that's available for about 30 days. My YouTube channel, as I mentioned a few times now, that's something where I release a video every Tuesday at 5. At 11 a.m. and it's usually a 5 to 10 minute video on anything from the Power BI service to Power BI Premium, Power BI Desktop, report authoring, just whatever I find as a cool tip or trick to share or a latest feature I want to present out. And then lastly, I'll just mention that as much as you guys have any questions or anything you're ever curious about with Power BI, absolutely shoot me a question on LinkedIn, and I try to answer any snack-sized questions as much as I can when it comes to that stuff. And with that, I'll just leave this up for a couple of minutes and open it to questions.
Yeah, we got a great question from Alex Powers. How often do you have to break the modeling best practices to support a visuals needs?
It's a great question. So it's also an open-ended question. So I'm trying to, because you didn't say report best practices, you said modeling best practices, which to me makes me think of the data model. So you're either incorrectly shaping the model or you're having to use weird relationships or something like that. I'll ask you maybe to clarify, and then at least based on what I know so far, I'll start to answer it, and then Greg just short circuit me once Alex has provided a bit more detail.
Sure.
But at least as far as the question of is maybe implementing some wonky features into the model or some weird nested relationships to account for certain things. There's definitely time, quite a few projects where the model is not perfect and it has a few layers to it, maybe even 3-4 relationships deep, because a customer's infrastructure goes from like a 1 to a mini to a mini to a 1 to a 1 to like, and there's just no way around this kind of like colluded path that they have between this category and this number that should be summed, but with like weird many-to-many relationships. So like, at least from one scenario, it's not uncommon and it's sometimes painful to implement, but there are definitely scenarios where I've just not found better solutions other than kind of having to fudge it, so to speak, at a few places to get as best of a solution as is feasible for those scenarios.
Awesome. Got another one about dynamic axes. Have you had to jump through that hoop yet?
That's a good question. So, the dynamic axis as far as the y-axis for size, of course, that's set automatically. There is it's defaulted to auto versus manual. In a perfect world, it'd be kind of nice where you could actually set it to, say, 1.2 times the max and 1.2 times the min or something like that, where you could still say dynamic, but also adjust where the dynamic range falls. It either has to be completely dynamic or fully manual. I've not tried to find any non-out-of-the-box solutions for that yet, but I know that's been a feature request where you could somehow alter the range of the auto min and max for, say, like the y-axis. Any of these as well, if you actually have something that you're passionate about that isn't a feature, please go and check out powerbi.ideas. That is where the Power BI team constantly monitors for stuff as far as implementing new features, and they get a lot of community feedback, and they listen very intently with it. So anytime you can upvote a feature that you found there, please go do that. I would encourage you to. And if it's not there, make that an idea. It's free. You just log in with your account, create the idea name, send that to all of your colleagues at your company. And if you have an idea and you just want to post it on one of the comments in my videos or other things, I've seen that before where somebody has commented to me an idea that they're trying to get implemented. I had never thought about it, but I liked it and I reposted it on LinkedIn and I asked other people to vote on it. So there's definitely ways to get exposure for that stuff and actually to be kind of part of the product team and help to drive change for the tool.
Awesome. I just linked the Power BI Ideas forum out to everybody to be able to click on and check out. Looks like the hottest one is option to use either light or dark interface. People love dark mode, which I can't figure out, but whatever, cool.
It is. I mean, as a developer and coder, I will say that it is significantly easier on the eyes. Like, I don't need the report to be a dark mode, but if I'm reading text, like my Outlook and my entire computer is dark mode. It's amazing. It's just like my eyeballs don't fall out of my head at the end of the day.
Maybe I should do that. Well,
it's
great.
Really nice. Try that sometime, Greg. Yeah. Go to your office setting, just in any office tool, like either Outlook, Word, PowerPoint, etc. There's the color theme. Select that to dark. It makes things so much easier to read.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're getting a few more questions. I know we need to get on to Mr. Paul, but I think these are good questions. Kendra's asking, do you have any tips for building a fixed financial statement with custom subtotals? Best I've come up with is a matrix with switch statements.
Yeah, anytime anytime the word finance or accounting gets thrown out, especially when you have people come in from the world of, let's say, Excel, where they've done VLOOKUPs and they basically built a custom grid with really, it's an impossible table. You can never build it out of a pivot table. You couldn't build it out of a matrix table. At that point, the best ways to do it are, maybe having some disconnected table with a series of labels and then switch statements to identify what row it's on. And there's no easy implementation. I've done similar things where I've had to build a custom kind of accounting grid where this column on row 2 has to be this number, but then on row 3, it has to be this other one. And there's just no way to do it out of the box. So you have to build, a lot of switching around DAX measures that allows for that really unique perspective. But ideally, I try to push back and say, that's going to take, say, 15 hours of extra development. Or how about this layout, which is close? All the numbers are still there. They're just in a slightly different order. Would this work? And, you know, ask them how much of a diminishing return is this customization really worth?
Yeah, and I think Paul chimed in too. Paul, you talk about paginated reports. This is a good use case.
Yeah, and I think it's important to differentiate between analytic reports and operational reports, though we do see that there's a lot of overlap. And that's really what reporting services, now called paginated reports, is all about. That's why it's part of the product stack.
I agree. Yeah, I don't use it enough that I always forget to mention it, but that's a great way to, you know, to highly customize those kind of layouts. Is it in the paginated report builder?
Yeah, and soon they still haven't done this yet, right? It's not available for pro licenses. I know last time Chris Finland was here, he was saying it's basically hinting at that it's going to come, but it's not a thing yet, is it, Paul?
Nope, no official announcement.
Nope. Greg, if I can I want to do your last question. I just want to put up this one last link for people. So one thing I also like to do just to get community participation is at the end of each talk, I have this as a sign up link, which basically drops your name into a pool. So if you're already a subscriber to my blog, it just enters your name in the pool. If you're not, it subscribes you and does that. But I pick one person out of that pool at the end of each talk, using the next day, and then they get an hour of consulting. So basically you get an hour with me to pick my brain on anything from Power BI, or maybe you have an issue with a model you're stuck on, or have some questions about some visualizations. So it's kind of a way to mutually benefit each other. So that link here that you see, the QR code will take you to that link. And then Greg, I'll just go ahead and answer your last question, then I'll switch over to Paul.
Pretty sweet. Looks like the last question, what Viz idea would you like us to upvote? And, you know, while Paul is doing his presentation, you can maybe link a few over to Kirill, because you have access to the live Q&A. Go ahead and start. You can start typing people's answers. But is there anything out there that you specifically like?
It's a good question. I mean, it just got released, but for a while, one of my things that I really wanted to come to pro was incremental refresh, and that's now available, which is amazing. Yeah, let me give it some thought while Paul's up, and I'll drop, like, let me do my top 3, and I'll put that into the chat window for people to upvote.